Hello people, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Expert says he'll keep buying XRP at low prices as market makers keep playing games. Okay guys, let's get into it. Okay, so this is just something that I wanted to cover because just going on with what's happening in the market right now and just going by the liquidation event that happened in October, which has ultimately led us to where we are now. I just wanted to kind of discuss this. Now, I want to just make this clear when I talk on this. Like, I'm really not trying to fearmonger here or anything like that, and maybe my thoughts might be a bit extreme, but I just want to discuss this, right? So let's get into what's actually going on here. So I've got a post here by the Kabasi letter, or the Kabisi letter. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. They say, you can't make this up. Bitcoin just surged plus $3,000 in 1 hour and reclaimed $90,000 as 120 million worth of leverage shorts were liquidated. Minutes later, $200 million worth of leverage longs were liquidated, with Bitcoin now down to $86,000. That's a $140 billion swing. Okay, so yeah, let's get into this then. So you've got here digital asset investor who says, a lot of games being played in crypto right now. Keep on playing and I'll keep scooping up XRP on the cheap. Okay, so I want to just share my thoughts on this, right? So I've made it pretty clear that when we look at the whole thing that happened in October, that in my opinion, that was a manipulated event, right? Trump made some news. There was someone who opened up an account half an hour before the news was just dropped, put this huge short on the market, perfectly timed. The news comes out, makes millions of dollars, holds on for a little bit longer because there was something else that happened as well. Made even more money, then closed the play, made I think it was like $100 million or something like that. It was ridiculously high amount of money that they made. Timed it perfectly, couldn't have asked to have timed it any better. And they'd literally made an account within half an hour when all this happened and made all that money. Then you've also got the fact that market makers, as in exchanges, etc., had, untold millions of people who were long in the market with leverage plays, a lot of leverage. And so basically, this was a thing where, Bitcoin was sitting at $126,000 at the time, and it was basically looking like it was ready to continue going up to see how much further it could go into, all-time high territories, like how much further it will go. So the market was looking really great. And then we had this, what I say is a manipulated event. And obviously, it just absolutely wiped out the market, wiped out all the leverage traders. Now, I'm not here to say whether leverage trading is, the right or wrong thing. Personally, I don't agree with doing it because I just think it's very risky. But the thing for me about this is, even if it is risky, if you're playing by the rules, then that's fair, right? Like, if you're playing a leverage position, I would say that's very dangerous, but you could win. It's like, you go to a casino. I'm not saying gambling's a good thing, but there are people who can go to a casino and win at a casino. It is possible. You can play the lottery. The odds are highly stacked against you, but you could win. That is a possibility. So for me, with leverage, it's not something that I would do personally, but there are people who make the right calls with leverage, right? That doesn't still mean it's the right thing to do, but that's just what people do. That's their lives. That's their choice. They can do whatever they want. And so when I look at that whole situation, that leveraged liquidation event, to me, I look at it and say, well, I'm sure a lot of people was put off crypto from that whole thing, because if it was the way it seemed, which was insider trading, it looked like it could be manipulated that easily. Why are people going to want to play this game? Why are people going to want to trade with crypto if they feel, okay, well, it can be that easily manipulated? So you got to understand with the stock market, the swings are not so volatile. So it's very different. Yes, prices can be impacted in the stock market as well, but you're not going to see nowhere near the same type of percentage drops as you would in the crypto market, because there's nowhere near as much money in the crypto market. So that's what makes it so much more volatile. And so I'm looking at this post now from the Kabisi letter and them talking about this whole, swing of Bitcoin going from $90,000 back down to $86,000. And like, my thing about this is like, there's people out there, like for example, Digital Asset Investor, Coach JV, you know, the usual suspects saying, you know, buy the dip. And my thing is this, like, I'm not selling off my crypto. I'll tell you that now. Like, I'm still here for the long haul, 100%. But like, if you're seeing these kinds of activities going on, like, are people going to want to keep doing this? Are people going to want to keep buying the dip? Because if this is true and this is another manipulated event, right? Like, we're getting into territory now where, like, this can just keep going on. Like, and so, like, how will markets continue to have their natural flow? Like, how, you know, will Bitcoin be able to go to a new all-time high if they can just keep manipulating the price every time? You know, if it's like, oh, it's getting a bit too high now, people have got high leverage and stuff like that, they're going to make a lot of money, let's just, you know, flush the market out, that kind of thing. It's like, you know, like, I just feel like, how can it gain momentum? Because as I've said before, like, I look at the whole thing with the October 10th liquidation event. My whole thing is like, where would we be now had that whole thing not have happened? Would we be in a situation now where Bitcoin is like $135,000, $140,000? I don't know. And we'll never know now, right? Because that happened. And so, like, this is where I look at this and I'm like, well, if this is stuff that's happening now, like we can see this swing again from the $90,000 to the $86,000, if this is the games that keep on, you know, being played, eventually people are just going to say, I'm not doing this no more. You know, like, why am I going to keep doing this? To, you know, keep having the market makers just manipulate the market as they see fit. Because, you know, for traders, it's really impossible territory to trade in, because even if you make the right call, if the market makers want to shift things around, they'll just manipulate the market, right? And so it's like, how do people continue to do, you know, their business in these types of, you know, these kind of market conditions? And so for me, I'm just looking at this where, like, you know, digital asset investors saying, oh, well, I'll just keep buying XRP on the cheap. Like, look, if this is true, like, this whole stuff is being manipulated at this point to this degree, my thing is, like, you've got to just throw everything out the window at this point, because, you know, market cycles, you know, bull runs, you know, all this stuff that you're used to. Well, is that really going to be the organic flow of things anymore if the prices can be manipulated as they see fit? I can't see how that would work. And so, you know, we've already said in this bull run, it's just not like prior bull runs. It's been very weird. And this is what I mean. If this is because, you know, the big institutions like, you know, BlackRock and all these companies with the ETFs, and then, you know, Trump and, you know, all these, you know, people who are involved in crypto, these governments and the institutions, if they can keep playing around with the price, then it's like, well, how does crypto grow from here? Because it could just be a very staggered process where, you know, they could make it so it's like, hey, we're never going to let crypto have those kind of gains that they used to have. We're not going to allow that. Like, maybe you'll have some amount of gains, like, for example, what we've seen so far, where, not to say that we haven't had, you know, some price improvement with like XRP, for example, but obviously it's just barely touched its new all-time high, that's not bull run activity. That's not what we normally see. Like, you'd normally see a run like Zcash, you know, there'd be like that kind of, you know, real violent upswing, and that's not occurred. So it's like, to me, and like I say, like, I could be being really, you know, really paranoid here, and I might be blowing this out of proportion. Maybe it's like a thing of, look, the market will still improve, it's fine and whatever. I just don't know. Like, and that's why I'm kind of covering this, because I'm just looking at this and I'm saying, well, if this is market manipulation and we're seeing all this, like, yeah, no wonder XRP and, like, you know, Bitcoin's not getting a chance to continue to go up, because they're forcing it to stay within a certain range and they keep liquidating people doing leverage. So it's like, well, where's it meant to go? Like, it's gone up to $90,000. So that could have been its continuation to maybe try and get to $100,000, but then it's been knocked back down to $86,000. So if that's been manipulated, they've manipulated it on the way up and manipulated it straight back on the way down. And so if that's the case, we're just at the mercy of the market. So like, this is where I'm looking at it from a perspective of, people are saying buy the dip, and it's like, look, why am I buying the dip if this is where crypto is going to be? Like, I'm not saying that I'm going to sell my cryptos. As I say, I've got more than enough cryptos now, and I'm going to see these out, and I am going to, still keep the ones I really believe in. But I'm just thinking, like, is this going to be a very controlled market going forward via the market makers? Controlled by the market makers. And that's just something that I'm wondering about, because for me, the October 10th liquidation event, that to me was manipulated. I saw enough evidence for me to be convinced that was a manipulated event. So, like, I am like, well, that was the huge blow that we had. Now, look, maybe this is a thing of that was always going to happen. It just needed a new story to push it over the edge. Do you know what I mean? So it could have been that, for example, there was some other crypto news that happened that was enough to wipe out the market. Maybe. I don't know. But that's the point. Like, I don't know. But maybe on the other hand, Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market was getting ready to go into this huge rally. And then the market makers were like, yeah, we're not going to allow that to happen. Trump dropped some news as well to manipulate the price. Got some insider trading going on. The market makers flushed the market. And here we are. It could be that, had that have not occurred, everything would have been great and would be, in a way better position now with all cryptos along with Bitcoin. So this is where I'm just like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like, if this stuff is real, like, that's not good. It's just not good, because, how do we continue to work through this then? How do we navigate this? But my whole thing is, I'm not trading. That's why I'm not trying to do trades. I'm just holding the cryptos that I believe in long term and just letting the price come. Now, my thing is about that is that I do still believe it will come, but could they push it back for longer or do it in a very controlled way? Possibly, if this is the manipulation that's happening. Very possibly, right? So that's where my, issue with it comes in. But we'll see. Time will tell. I'm hopeful that we are still in this bull run and that we will get the alt season rally at some point. So all we can do is just go through the motions of this and just see what happens, right? Like, that's it. We are at the mercy of the market and the market makers. So there's not a lot we can do. But I just think, for me, my concern about this, for example, is even like getting a bull run. Like, if this is happening, this is going to put people off. So there could be a lot of traders who would normally be in here, helping add liquidity into the market at this point, trading. But they might be like, I'm not doing this no more, because what's the point in playing in a game that's clearly being manipulated, so I can't win either way? Do you see what I mean? So this might be part of the reason why the market's not really moving as much as well. It could be like people are fed up and they're seeing, hey, this is blatant manipulation. I'm not going to get into this market no more. Like, I saw Credible Crypto when he saw the liquidation event. He lost like $400,000, right? And he said, like, as it stands right now, I can't trade in these conditions. So he said, I will still trade to a certain extent, but I'm not going to trade to the extent that I used to trade, because, like, I can't do that within these types of conditions, like the manipulation. So that's someone who, 400k worth of money. Now, imagine that with more people who've got more money. Imagine that with people who may have millions to be able to trade, or $1 million to be able to trade. And them saying, I'm not doing that no more. So that's lack of liquidity now that we're not getting because of these events. So these are things that could all be playing a part in the market, being stagnant. It could be that a lot of people have come out and said, yeah, I'm not doing this. Do you see what I mean? So I'm just looking at it from a much bigger picture. So yeah, like, it's all good saying buy the dip. But for me, it's like, I don't think you're looking at the bigger picture here. I don't think you're looking at what this could really mean, if this really is what's going on and how this could affect the markets going forward. Like, that could be exactly what's going on right now. It could be that we're in like a very manipulated environment and that's why this bull run hasn't occurred. Like, we don't know. So yeah, like, I'm just thinking a bit deeper on this. But as I say, my mind might be running away with me here. I might be getting like way too deep into it, and it might be like, look, this was going to happen regardless. It just needed a reason and it was going to happen. So, everything will still be fine and the bull run will still play. I'd like to know. So if anybody has that kind of information, please feel free to share it with me. But yeah, I'm just expressing my thoughts here. So yeah, like I say, all we can do is like see how things go. Like, I'm not selling my crypto. I'm not selling my XRP. So it's not a thing where I'm getting out of the market. So I just have to play along with it and see how it goes. But it's just a concern that I've got on my head. So we'll see what happens. But fingers crossed, everything works out for the best. thank you very much for watching this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell. Take care.